Good afternoon, students. Today we will try to understand certain points about Heisenberg uncertainty relation. Especially, I'm more interested in uh, the derivation part of the Heisenberg uncertainty relation. Of course, uh, there is a much more generalized Heisenberg uncertainty relation. That is something that I just wanted to share with you how it has come up. And of course, using the generalized Heisenberg uncertainty relation, one can actually derive different uncertainty relations, whether it is, be it uh, in terms of position and the momentum, and also the energy and time, and any other uncertainty relation, we can actually derive using the Heisenberg uncertainty relation. Well, you know that the uncertainty, the product of the uncertainty in position and momentum, it is greater than or equal to h cross by 2 or h by 4 pi, right? Similarly, the uncertainty, the product of the uncertainty in energy and the time is given by uh, is greater than or equal to, again, h by 4 pi. This is something that you have learned, and those things, how to derive and where from those relations have come up, I just wanted to discuss today class. And before going to do that, there is something that very important to understand certain things. Of course, this particular topic is also important for the next topic, that is the angular momentum concept. So therefore, uh, first we will begin with some of the basic aspects which are required to understand the Heisenberg, which are required to derive the Heisenberg uncertainty relation. That is nothing but the commutation property. Commutation property. What is commutation property? So commutative property is defined by, suppose if you have an arbitrary function f of x. Suppose if you have a arbitrary function f of x, and if you have two operators, a and b are said to be commutative with each other if this product, what is that product? So let the operator b operate upon f of x, and later followed by, you will get some number, and later what you do, that function, on that function, the second operator a can be operated. Okay, so you will get basically one quantity. Essentially you will get one quantity. That quantity, if it is same as the first quantity, first operator operating upon f of x, and if that is if later followed by operator b. Okay, so if these two aspects, if these two products are, if this relation is satisfied, then we say it is both operators with regard to any arbitrary function f of x, these are said to be commutative property. Okay, well, this is not quite obvious what you think. Suppose you just have, imagine two algebraic functions. Okay, a, let's say maybe x square and then x square and the x both are algebraic functions, and then whether you multiply x with x square or x square with x, both are same. Therefore the difference when you take it, then actually it is 0. But this is not obvious when you talk about the operators. Okay, let us suppose a are two operators and they are said to be commutative only when this relation is satisfied. Okay, suppose if you evaluate AB, operator AB, okay, f of x is equal to operator BA f of x. Okay, if this relation is satisfied, then they are said to be commutative. Okay, and if you are not getting this equality relation, AB f of x is not equal to BA f of x, then we say operators A and B are said to be not commutative. Okay, and in fact, whatever you get the product or the uh, resultant, that resultant, what we call it as a commutator. Okay, so let me take an example to explain what exactly is this. So let us consider two operators. What are those? D upon dx is my operator A, and B is my operator x. Okay, B is my operator x. So now I just wanted to find out what is the commutator. Why I'm commutating, why I'm finding out, I just wanted to know whether they commute with each other or not. Okay, if they commute with each other, I should get 0. Okay, when AB f of x is equal to BA f of x, then I would say these are commuting with each other, otherwise not, right? So I just wanted to find out the commutator, and based on that I just want to comment upon their commutation, right? Now let us calculate AB f of x first. D upon dx, okay, and that is our A operator, and the next one is x f of x. Okay, x f of x, I just written in a slightly different fashion, that the x f of x, I have just put it into a square bracket. Okay, it is just a product. And then the other one, then you know, the derivation of two functions. Derivation of two functions, basically you can apply the product rule, and then it is nothing but the derivative of the first function plus second function multiplied by the derivative of the second, sorry, first function multiplied by the derivative of the second function. So this is nothing but f of x plus x d f of x upon dx. Okay. Similarly, we can also evaluate what is BA f of x. Okay. In the BA f of x is nothing but B operator is nothing but our x. Okay, it is just a position. So x, you can just write it like a x operator. You can just write it like a x, and then the second one, A means d upon dx, and then right side we have f of x, so that we can write it like a d f of x upon dx. Okay, AB f of x is equal to f of x plus x d f of x upon dx, whereas BA f of x is equal to x d f of x upon dx. So let us evaluate the subtraction. Let us subtract AB f of x. Uh, uh, Let us subtract BA f of x from the AB f of x, which is nothing but basically f of x actually. As you can see here, that these two quantities actually cancel out because they are same, and then what you get is actually f of x. That means AB minus BA f of x is equal to f of x. Okay, and that means AB minus BA f of x is equal to f of x, and f of x, since f of x is an arbitrary, you can actually cancel out f of x, and what we get actually is this. Okay, the shorthand notation of the commutation property is given by square bracket A comma B. A comma B. So A comma B, you can actually expand and write it like AB minus DA, right? Now what we got actually is 1. Okay, this is true for all arbitrary function f of x. Okay, and the factor, as you can see here, the factor what you get it a commutator is not 0. What we got is 1. Therefore, 1 is called as a commutator, and then since we are getting a non-zero quantity at the end of this evaluation of the ABF of x and BAF of x and their subtraction, we say that these operators d upon dx and then the operator b, which is nothing but x, both actually do not commute. Okay, had it been the case that if the quantity is 0, then we could have said that these two operators are actually commute with each other. Okay, now let us move on and find out one more commutator, one more problem. Let us evaluate what is the commutator of the position quantity, of course, the x component of the momentum, and also the position. So let us evaluate what is the commutator of these two things. Okay, now let us take any arbitrary wave function. This time I'm just taking psi f of x, psi of x. Okay, so again the same thing. It is nothing but you can just AB minus BA, and then you take inside the wave function you can take inside, and then let it operate one after the other wave function. That is what we do. Now here, in the quantum mechanics, the operator Px is given by IH cross dou upon dou x. Of course, d upon dx can be written, since we are only dealing with the x. We don't have any other variable, only one variable. So therefore, we can write it like IH cross dou upon minus IH cross d upon dx comma x. Okay, so the arbitrary wave function is psi of x. Okay, now you can actually expand and write down minus IH cross d upon dx multiplied by, okay, this is the first one. You can see here, this is the first one. Okay, this is our first operator, right? This entire thing is our first operator multiplied by the second operator is x, so x is written. Then the psi of x is written on the right hand side of the two operators. Then in the next case, minus BA we have to write it. Minus BA we have to write it. B means x, and then we have the operator A, that is this quantity, right? And then as usual, that outside the bracket we have psi of x. That psi of x we are just taken inside, that is the quantity. Okay, now what you can do, you can actually do you can apply a derivation of the product. Then you do this first derivation. Then that becomes actually minus IH cross derivative of the first function multiplied by the second function. Derivative of the first function, that is x, which is nothing but 1, right? And then which has to be multiplied with the psi of x. So psi of x is written as such. Psi of x is written as such, and the derivative of the 1, actually it is 1, so it is not written. Then you have to take the plus. Okay, the derivative of the product is nothing but you have to have a plus first function multiplied by the derivative of the second function. Okay, then when it comes to the derivative of the second function, first function is x, is written here, right? And IH cross is written there, because IH cross doesn't affect with regard to the derivation of the x is concerned. Therefore, it is nothing but d psi of x upon dx. Okay, and then from here, if you can notice here, there is a minus sign outside and there is a minus sign inside. So both get cancelled out, and then it becomes a positive quantity. What you get is x multiplied by IH cross dou psi of x upon dou x. Okay, so now you can easily make out that this quantity, both are equal. Therefore, what you get is the answer minus IH cross psi upon psi of x. Okay, that means the commutator, right? The commutator px and x is given by IH cross psi of x. So you can just you can cancel out, since these are the arbitrary functions, you can cancel out, and the commutator, what we say, it is minus IH cross. Okay. Now there is a question for you. Suppose if you evaluate instead of P, the commutation between Px and Dx, I want to evaluate. If I given you a problem like this, so what is the answer?
IH cross.
IH cross, yeah, correct. So just remember that is negative sign actually will go away because of there is a negative sign here, right? So in this case, that this becomes actually a positive quantity. Therefore, it is simply IH cross. Okay. So in the CSR point of view, many of the questions used to ask like this. Okay, many of the questions on the commutation property used to be asked. So be prepared and then try to do it. So now I just give an example of this px. Okay, px, x component of the momentum, and x square. If I ask you to evaluate what is the commutator, what is the answer for this? We have just done the commutator of px and x. Now, instead of x, we have x square. So what could be the answer? Any guess?
-2 IH cut x.
Yeah, this is right. So it is basically the derivative of the x square will come into the picture. So we have got, if it is x, just minus IH cross, right? Now the derivative of the algebraic function, that is x square, has to be added to that. That will be the answer. Derivative of the x square, it is 2x. So minus IH cross 2x is the commutator of this particular thing. Okay, so we can actually evaluate what is the commutator of px and x square operators, and by taking again one more arbitrary function, psi of x or f of x, whatever it is convenient to you, whichever it is comfortable to you, and then we can go on calculating the similar fashion, and what we get is this quantity minus IH cross 2x psi of x. Okay, the psi of x, since it is arbitrary, that can be cancelled, and the commutator is minus IH cross 2x. I hope that you know what is variance. And variance is a measure of spread of distribution about its mean. Okay, variance is a measure of spread of distribution. So with respect to its a mean or the average. Now, average, how it is calculated? So if you have done n number of times if you have measured a quantity n number of times, and how to evaluate the average, we know very well. The similar fashion that we can calculate the average in quantum mechanics, the average, what we call it as the expectation value. Okay, so this is the expectation value, and which is also nothing but the average value. Okay, so it is given by xj f of xj. Okay, and and similarly, the square of the average or the expectation value, the definition is given by sigma j runs from 1 to n xj square f of xj. Okay, so uh, let us evaluate and then let us appreciate this thing. And suppose if you have a data like that, x is given by 134 and f of x is given by 2, 0.2, 0.25 and 0.55. Okay, so there are the three measurements that we have done it. For example, let's say you have coined you have basically coined dice or maybe a toss, right? So the probability of each time that probably you might have evaluated. So you have got one time one quantity, that is 0, and then probability is basically 0.2 out of the n number of measurements, and 3 times you got something. Okay, and the probability when you evaluate, that becomes 0.25, and 4 times you got other quantity, right? And then the probability is actually, when you evaluate, that becomes 0.55. So this is the data, and from this data, if you are actually asked what is the mean value or the average or the expectation value, so how do we calculate? So it is just nothing but just multiply and use this formula, what is written here, and then try to evaluate, and what you get is actually is this quantity. And okay, by making using of this formula, you can actually evaluate the expectation value of the variable x. Okay, and similarly we can also evaluate what is the square of expectation value in square of this particular thing, then it becomes 11.25. Okay, as you can see here, that suppose if you square this, suppose you just evaluate what is the expectation value or the average value, and then take the square of it. Okay, and the square, it actually becomes less than, maybe I can say it is 9 point something, right? Suppose if you take what is the square, and this square is nothing but this square, this becomes actually 9 point something, right? And here it is just the square of expectation value of the square, right? Square of the x. So that is actually 11, and this is true for any of the experimental measurement of the observables. Therefore, we can actually say that the square of the expectation value is not equal to square of the expectation value in x, right? Both are slightly different, and then still and further we can say that the square of the expectation value minus, okay, the expectation value square is always greater than or equal to 0. This is the best example what you can see here. So square of the expectation value is always greater than expectation value square. Okay, expectation value, okay, the same physical quantity or measured quantity is always greater than is equal to 0. Similarly, we can also have what is variance. What is variance? Variance is just nothing but x minus x minus expectation value or the average value, right? This quantity, to be precise, variance is nothing but, okay, it is already given the definition. It is a measure of the spread of the distribution about its norm, about its mean or the average. So here, suppose if sigma x is the variance, and it is given by x minus expectation value or the average of the x. So how much your measured quantity, how much it is deviated from the mean, is something that what we call it as the variance. Okay. Now the variance square, if you do it, then what you get is this. Okay, just to take the square of it. And there is a theorem that we can actually prove that the square of the expectation value, okay, and what we have actually seen, just with an example, we have already observed this phenomena. And the similar thing, actually, there is a theorem that this is true for any type of measurement, and square of the expectation value minus expectation value square is always greater than or is equal to 0. This is something that we can prove it, and this theorem proof is available. Most of the textbook, please go through it. Okay. Now, why I'm discussing all these things, because these are some of the things that we'll be using in our discussion of Heisenberg uncertainty relation. Now, Heisenberg uncertainty relation is actually based on the derivation of a Schwarz inequality. So first of all, we will try to solve the Schwarz inequality, and from that we will try to derive the generalized Heisenberg uncertainty relation. So what is the Schwarz inequality? Okay, and this is for your kind information, this is the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. This is the general relation. Basically the product of the uncertainties, square of the product of the uncertainties is always greater than or is equal to that quantity on the right hand side, that is minus 1 over 4 the expectation value of the operator square. Okay, so that is the generalized Heisenberg uncertainty relation, and then we'll try to prove this from the Schwarz inequality. And for that, let us assume that f and g are two arbitrary functions and then alpha is a real parameter. So let us consider basically two operators, A and B, that is one thing, and also assume that the two arbitrary function f and g are the two arbitrary function, and alpha is a real parameter. Alpha is a real parameter. Now, once we have assumed these things, so if you try to evaluate, okay, what I do is that since my alpha is a real quantity, I will try to multiply the one function, that is alpha times f, alpha times f, and then I will add together, I will basically add g function to it, okay, and then finally what I do, so I will take the complex conjugate of this particular quantity and basically multiply it, and then I will try to integrate it over the entire space. What I'm doing, so after assuming, since we assumed f and g are two arbitrary functions, and alpha is my real parameter, what I do is that I will just try to multiply one of the function, that is f, with alpha, and then I will add to that quantity another function, that is g, right? Now I will take that becomes a function, right? Essentially you are actually you are having a function, so summation of two function becomes another function, isn't it? Now that function, let us take the complex conjugate, that is this quantity, okay, multiply it and then basically integrate it over the entire space. So what you get answer out of this? Well, when you integrate it, so integration is a kind of summation over the small tiny bits. Therefore, it is always true that when you try to integrate over the entire space, this is going to be a positive quantity. So this you can apply to any other functions that you come across in algebra. This relation will be true because integration will be certainly a positive quantity, right? Now, essentially, this is actually nothing but the alpha f, modulus of alpha f plus g whole square is the probability definition. Please remember that this is the probability, right? The probability is given by psi star psi. Integral psi star psi d tau is the probability, right? Which is also referred to as the modulus of psi whole square, modulus of psi square, right? So it is basically a probability. Please remember this. Now what I do is that we have this relation and we will try to multiply these things actually. Okay, so since we have the product, so these products actually we can multiply it. Now there is a complex conjugate notation in the first function, right? So this function, the complex conjugation notation you can take inside, okay? You can apply it to the everything. So since alpha is it's not a function, so it cannot take anything, but then function can be imaginary. So therefore the complex conjugate things you can take it inside. That is the first thing that I have done it. And later on I am just trying to multiply it. So when I try to multiply a plus b multiplied by a minus b, right? Or no, a plus b multiplied by c plus d, because these are complex conjugate functions, so they are not actually, they cannot be equated with this alpha times f. So therefore basically it is, there are four terms that you get it when you multiply these things. Then the first term is given by this, okay, alpha f star here, and then there is another alpha f. Okay, so when you multiply it alpha, it's a alpha square, and then what you have is the f star multiplied by f d tau. Okay, so you can just apply integral. Okay, so similarly when you multiply this with this, you get one thing. Okay, similarly you can actually multiply this with that. Okay, you will get one function, one term, and then when you multiply this with this, you will get another integral term. So there are four terms in the entire expression. Okay, these are actually given there. Now, what we can do, we can actually we can actually substitute. Instead of writing this integral thing, I just wanted to make a substitution. What is the substitution? You can realize that this is integral f star f of d tau. I'm just going to replace with a quantity. Okay, a is instead of writing the entire integral, I just wanted to replace that integral with some notation that is, I'm thinking that is basically a capital A. Similarly, I have another one, integral f star g d tau. So this is the second term I have. So this I am denoting with b. Okay, and the third integral, that is this, you can realize this is having, it is f g star d tau, f g star f d tau, which is actually nothing but b star. Okay, please remember that how these two things are different. This already we defined f star, integral f star g d tau is as a b. If that is the case, this is the just a complex conjugate of this, right? Okay, when you take the complex conjugate of this, then you will get this. When you take this complex conjugate of this, you would get this. So therefore, this is b star. Okay, b star is nothing but the complex conjugate of b, and the final term, that is fourth term, integral g star g, is taken to be another quantity, that is c. Okay, now once you assumed those things, so instead of writing the very lengthy expression, so now it becomes very simpler expression. What is the expression? So alpha square a plus alpha into b plus b star plus c, which is greater than or equal to 0. So this expression you can label with some number for the sake of reusability in the future derivation. And then, this is, as you can realize, this is a quadratic relation, right? This is a quadratic relation, right? Alpha, it is of the form like, alpha x square plus bx plus c, which is greater than or equal to 0. If this is to be true, then it's a root. Okay, this b square minus 4ac must be less than or equal to 0. This is something that it comes in algebra. You might have studied this thing. So you can actually apply this particular algebraic relation or the quadratic relations to our expression, that is alpha square a plus alpha times b plus b star plus c greater than or equal to 0. If you can apply to our system this particular thing, here b place, what we have is b plus b star. Okay, so b plus b star square minus 4ac must be, since this quantity is greater than or equal to 0, so when we evaluate this one, then this must be actually less than or equal to 0. Right? Now, this you can just simply rearrange it in a slightly different fashion. So the 4ac, you can take this side. Okay, now 4ac, you can move to the other side. That is nothing but b plus b star whole square is less than or equal to 4ac. That means 4ac is greater than or equal to b plus b star whole square. Okay, so from that you can write it, AC is greater than or equal to 1 over 4 multiplied by b plus b star whole square. Okay, now what is ABC? Well, we have already substituted. What is ABC? We have substituted those values, you just replace it. A is nothing but integral f star f d tau, and our C is nothing but integral g star g d tau, right? And then B is nothing but integral f star g d tau, and then our B star is nothing but integral g star f d tau. So those values just substitute over there, and then this is what we get it. This entire inequality, what we actually call it as a Schwarz inequality. Okay, this entire expression, what we got here, is referred to as the Schwarz inequality. Of course, It's not very complex derivation, very straightforward derivation. Now this is something that we will make use of it to derive the Heisenberg uncertainty relation. Let us move on to the derivation of the generalized Heisenberg uncertainty relation. So for which, of course, this is the generalized Heisenberg uncertainty relation. And for this, what I assume is that there are two Hermitian operators I am assuming. So let us consider A and B are the two Hermitian operators, and then psi is a normalized wave function. Now, I just take a new operator instead of taking A operator as such. What I do is that I will multiply my operator A, which is a Hermitian operator. I hope that most of you would remember what is Hermitian operator. Okay, you can actually change the position of the wave function in the integral. That is the Hermitian property. Well, so my operator, I'm just going to multiply with some parameter delta, okay, and which is equal to this particular thing I am defining like A minus expectation value of A. Okay, so when I subtract, A is actually my operator, Hermitian operator. Now from that Hermitian operator, I am subtracting expectation value of A itself. So that basically is going to be new operator, isn't it? Okay, so that particular thing, I'm defining my delta A is nothing but A minus expectation value of A, which is nothing but a new operator for any parameter of delta. Now, I just wanted to evaluate what is this quantity. Integral delta A psi, the complex conjugate of the delta A psi multiplied by delta A psi d tau. So let us evaluate this quantity. Okay, but now we know what is delta A. Delta A is nothing but A minus expectation value of A itself. Okay, so you can replace what is delta A x delta A according to our definition, and then we essentially you get this integral. Okay, now you can see that this basically gives you the, when you try to multiply these things, you will get actually 4 terms. Okay, essentially you will get 4 terms. So this you can multiply with this. Similarly, this you can multiply with this. Okay, this you multiply with this, and again this you multiply with this. So essentially you are going to get 4 terms in the integral. Now integral A psi, the complex conjugate of A psi, multiplied by A psi. Okay, here A, please remember that here there is a operator A, and then outside you have a psi. Outside you have actually a psi. Please correct it. Here there should be operator notation. Please correct this. I made a mistake. And okay, I made a mistake. And okay, A. Okay, here already complex conjugate, and there is another one, psi star. Okay, and then A, and then from here psi. Okay, so that is what is written here. A psi complex conjugate multiplied by A psi d tau. That is the first term. The second term is again A psi complex conjugate of A psi multiplied by, here there is an expectation value of A. Okay, average of A multiplied by psi d tau, and then when you multiply these two, okay, second term in the first product, and then this one when you multiply, then you get this. Okay, and then when you multiply the 2 terms, then you get this. Okay, so there are 4 integrals that we get it, but you can see here that this is the A star. Okay, the first term here you can take inside all these things. Here A star psi star. Okay, A star psi star, and A psi d tau minus, from here what I am going to do is slightly a small modification, what I'm going to do is this. So in this integral, you can see here, there is a expectation value of the operator A. Expectation value of any operator, actually it's a real quantity. It's going to be some quantity, and definitely it will not depend upon the, it will not be, integration will not affect the expectation value. It is because it's a real quantity. Therefore, so that you can actually move outside the integration notation. Similarly, here there is a expectation value or the average value of operator A, then that also again you can move outside. And here there are two, not one, there are two are there. So this is one expectation value of A and this is expectation value of A. Therefore, what I am doing here, that the expectation value of A are actually moved outside the integration notation. Okay. Now it becomes, the third term becomes expectation value of A multiplied by integral psi star A psi d tau plus here there are two expectation value of A. So those things you can square it. So integral psi star psi d tau. Okay. Now what you can see here, the next step what I'm going to do here, you can notice that the A star psi star, A star psi star. Now since my A is a Hermitian, I can actually move to this position. Okay, I can move, I can write A star this just after this psi star, and I can also, I have for that moment I have to basically remove the complex conjugate notation. For that I have to remove the complex conjugate notation. So let me remind you what is the Hermitian property. So if you have a two function psi, okay, psi star operator A, sorry, phi star operator A multiplied by psi d tau is given, d tau may be written as, if A is said to be a Hermitian, for any two acceptable wave functions phi and psi star, so this relation must be satisfied. What is this? Integral phi star A psi d tau must be integral psi star A phi d tau. Okay, and it's a complex conjugate. Complex conjugate, the entire complex conjugate we have to take into consider. Okay. Now this complex conjugate, if you can take inside, actually this is psi star. Okay. There is a complex conjugate. There is a complex conjugate that cancel out, and the complex conjugate only will be here. Okay. That means this also can be written as integral psi star A, and here there is a phi. Oh, sorry. Here there won't be. Sorry, this won't be there. This won't be there. No. Because there is a complex conjugate and there is a complex conjugate, both cancel out, and only the complex conjugate is only applied to the phi, not to the any other, not to psi. If the two wave functions, acceptable wave functions, are actually said to be the Hermitian, provided this condition is satisfied. So based on that, the functions actually you can move it. Okay, the functions actually you can move it. Here we were only talking about, here what we are actually exchanging is the wave functions. Okay, but now what we are doing, since we are moving this wave function, okay, this wave function, if it can be moved to the other side of the operator, provided that the complex conjugate has to be removed. Okay, and here it is slightly different, and here what we are doing actually, this A or the wave function which is complex conjugate, this we are moving left hand side of the operator at an expense of removing the complex conjugative notation, right? So you can write like this, and then this is something that this term you can simplify that what is the psi star a psi star a psi d tau. So what is this? This is the expectation value of a itself, isn't it? What is the definition? If you have a normalized wave function and its expectation value is given by integral psi star operator multiplied by psi d tau, okay, so that is the expectation value. If it is not normalized, then denominator will have integral psi star psi d tau, right? So since we already started with a normalized wave function psi, therefore expectation, this is nothing but the expectation value itself, this integral. And then since it is normalized, this is again actually 1, okay? Since it is normalized, that is going to be 1. Now, after doing all the simplification, what we get is this, okay? Integral psi star operator a square psi d tau minus this particular quantity, and from here again this quantity, and then this quantity. As I told you, this quantity is nothing but the expectation value of a. Okay, this is expectation value of a. Similarly, the next term, that is third term, that is also expectation value of a. Okay, so since already outside there is an expectation value of a, here also there is expectation value of a, and then basically expectation value of a whole square, okay, and then plus here the fourth term is this, that fourth term is just written there. So if you simplify this, the integral delta a, okay, delta a psi star delta a psi d tau is equal to expectation value of the square of the operator minus expectation value a square. Okay, so that is the quantity that we can get it. Now, what is this actually? What is this? This is nothing but the variance, right? Square of the variance, right? Or the uncertainty. Variance or the uncertainty, so which we normally represent with the delta a square. Okay, square of the variance is nothing but the uncertainty. So that is something that we replace with the a delta a capital. This is the other delta a square. Okay. Similarly, we can also do the same exercise by taking another new operator, that is delta b. Delta b is equal to b minus expectation value of b. Okay, please recall that previously we have started with the delta a is equal to operator a minus expectation value of a. Okay, so that is defined like that, and then similarly we can also define our delta b operator, right, is like a minus expectation value of b minus expectation value of b. Then this will again, we can prove that this integral delta b psi star delta b psi d tau is equal to expectation value of b square minus expectation value of b whole square, which is nothing but delta b square. That we can prove it. I'm not going to do this because it is the similar exercise. Now similarly, I'm also going to, suppose if I multiply this particular delta b with I on imaginary quantity, again still we can prove that this particular quantity, what is this particular integral, integral I delta b psi star I delta b psi d tau is equal to, we can prove this. Okay, we can also prove this. Even if you multiply with the I, it doesn't affect, still you get this. Still you get this. Okay. Now what we do to prove the generalized Heisenberg uncertainty relation, that what we do, delta A psi, we assume as a function f. And similarly, I delta B psi as another function, that is g. Okay, I delta B psi as another function, that is g. Now what we do, we have the Schwarz inequality. So let us consider the Schwarz inequality. And these integrals on the left hand side, it is already proven that these are nothing but delta A square. Okay, delta A square, operator A square, similarly delta B square, right? So what we try to do is, on the right hand side, these quantities are not evaluated. So let us try to evaluate these quantities. Now the first quantity is evaluated on the left hand side. You can see here this integral I am trying to evaluate. So what is this integral? So this integral is nothing but, what is my f? F is nothing but delta A psi star. What is g? G is defined to be I delta B psi d tau. Okay, so now what we do, just substitute what is delta A. Delta A, it is defined to be A minus expectation value of A. And what is I delta B? It is I multiplied by delta B is like B minus expectation value of B. Okay, B minus expectation value of B multiplied by psi. Now here you can see here, if you try to multiply these terms, then we'll get 4 terms. But before that, what I can do, since it is I is imaginary, this I, you can move outside the integral. So in the next step, it is done here. So I integral A minus expectation value of A star psi star. So from this, okay, from this we get this, and then here this again you can write it as such. Okay, now I, then psi star expectation value of A minus expectation value of A minus expectation value of A multiplied by B minus expectation value of B. Okay, now what you can do, this quantity is proven to be this particular object, that is I integral psi star, right? So I have just made a slight rearrangement. What is this? So I have just moved, in this step actually, so psi I have moved to left hand side of the operator. So instead of keeping on the right hand side, I have moved to the right hand side of the operator. So when I move it, then I have to remove the complex conjugate mutation. So that is what done here. Okay, so I have done here. I have not done for the wave function, but then I have done it for the what is that, operator. So operator complex conjugate has been removed. So this arrangement is followed. Either you can move the operator with the expense of removing or placing the complex conjugate notation, or the wave function either removing or keeping the complex conjugate notation, because this we are doing because the operator is Hermitian. Okay, that is the reason why this moment is allowed. Now this quantity, that I integral psi star A minus expectation value of A multiplied by B minus expectation value of B psi d tau. So this is the quantity. F star G is the subject. Similarly, what we do, we try to evaluate this object. So what is this object? Integral G star F d tau. Well, this can be evaluated in the similar fashion, and what we get is, okay, there is a minus I. Instead of simple here that we are getting I, but here we get there is a minus I. Why? Because here there is a complex conjugate. So our B is defined to be I delta. Our B is defined to be I delta B psi. Okay, I delta B psi. So I delta B. Delta B is nothing but B minus expectation value of B. Now, so this is the object. I delta B means this is the object, and we'll have to take complex conjugate. So for I there is a minus I, and then B minus expectation value of B. So complex conjugate as such it is there, and then psi star becomes psi star. So and then multiplied by A minus expectation value of A. Now, what we can do again, you can just move this object the other side, or the wave function. You can move this. So at the expense of the complex conjugate, then this becomes this object. So what we have in the Schwarz inequality on the right hand side, the summation of the two terms. The first term is actually this quantity, and the second term is it becomes this quantity. So what you have to do is to just try to evaluate. So in the next step, what I'm trying to evaluate is this summation. That summation is nothing but I psi star A minus A brackets A multiplied by B minus bracket B psi d tau minus psi star integral psi star B minus brackets B. I mean, brackets means basically expectation value of B multiplied by A minus expectation value of A. Now, you can see both side, in both the terms, both the integral terms, we have actually I. So I you can take out as a common factor, and then you can write it this fashion. So what is this? So that should be a square bracket. I think I have forgotten this. Yeah, already I think it is there. So already it is there. These brackets are there. So it's not a matter. And then we have this. Okay, we have these things. This product is there, and then this product is as such it is written here. Okay, if you try to basically simplify this, okay, you will get here there are 4 terms. Here you will get 4 terms. Similarly, here you get 4 terms. And then all the cross terms actually vanishes. Only couple of things, only 2 integrals will survive, and then those are nothing but these object AB. Okay, operators AB minus operators BA. Okay, this is what you get it. You can take it as an exercise and do it. This is what you get it. And the AB minus BA is nothing but the commutation, right? The commutator of A comma B. So our the summation, that is the right hand side summation integral f star g tau plus integral g star f d tau is equal to I integral psi star AB minus BA psi d tau. Okay, now that is nothing but, okay, now let us evaluate what is this Schwarz inequality. The Schwarz inequality is this object, and please remember that these right hand side things are nothing but delta A square, delta B square. This already we have evaluated, and then which is greater than 1 over 4, 1 over 4 and I. So this summation is already here. You can see here this summation is already evaluated. It is exactly this object. So that object I have just substituted here. So, and then please remember there is a square of this total integral. So you can just take inside, and there is I square. So I whole square. I square means minus 1. So there will be a negative sign will come up in the next step. There will be a negative sign will come up, and then here that there is a square. The square, what we do, we will do like this. Square let it be, but then this minus 1 has come into the picture because there is a I square. I square is minus 1. And then psi star, this object, so AB minus BA, it is nothing but the computation of the AB. And a shorthand notation, it is a square brackets A comma B. It is written psi d tau whole square, right? Now, you can see here that what is our psi? Psi is our normalized wave function, right? Now you can see here, if it is a normalized wave function, so AB minus BA, again it is an operator, right? AB is an operator, BA is also operator, and it's a summation or linear combination, again it is going to be an operator, right? So this object is essentially an operator. So the center, what we see, AB minus BA is an operator, linear operator. Okay, and then on the right hand side of this operator we have the psi, and left hand side we have psi star. So essentially this is like, you know, the expectation value of the commutator. It is nothing but the expectation value of the commutator A and B, right? So that is why that instead of writing this integral is essentially nothing but the expectation value of the A comma B. Okay, that is what it is written. So this is the generalized Heisenberg wave, Heisenberg principle, and using this you can actually derive any of the relation which you have studied in your early classes. So let us do that and try to derive the uncertainty principle for position and momentum. Well, we know that for which, you know, this particular relation, as I mentioned, that any mutually related objects, observables, and the operators, this is true. So momentum and position are related. So therefore, we can apply to the position and momentum operators, and it is nothing but the x square delta x square, right? A you can replace with x, and B replace with px, right? Then which is greater than or equal to minus 1 over 4 operator x comma px, operator x comma px. Please remember that this commutator of x comma px, we have evaluated what is commutator px comma x, right? At the beginning of my lecture today, I have just discussed this problem is done. That is nothing but just IH cross. That is nothing but IH cross. So it is the expectation value of IH cross square on the right hand side. Now this is expectation value of IH cross. So it is just a number, right? It is a Planck constant, and it is just the, again when you square it, this is again it's a number. So there is no meaning for the expectation value writing in the expectation value notation. So it is just so you can simplify it, and it is going to be I square, right? I square is -1, so already there is a -1 here. So -1 cancel out, and we'll have h cross square upon 4 on the right hand side. So we will get on the left hand side delta x square delta p x square greater than or equal to h cross square upon 4. This you can further simplify and say that the delta x multiplied by delta px whole square must be greater than or equal to h by 2 whole square. So both sides the squares you can cancel out. Delta x multiplied by delta px, okay, must be greater than or equal to h cross h cross by 2, which you normally we write it like h by 4 pi, right? Because h cross is nothing but h by 2 pi. So on that ground, it is just nothing but on right hand side it is h by 4 pi. So that is the Heisenberg uncertainty relation for the two observables, that is the momentum and the position. So similar exercise you can do it for energy and time as an exercise by using this generalized Heisenberg uncertainty relation. So having understood what is the generalized Heisenberg uncertainty relation, so we will continue to discuss upon some other aspect, that is some of the general theorems which are really required to understand the angular momentum concept. There are two general theorems which we will discuss further, and then we will complete very small derivation part, a small a proof we will discuss, and then we will try to wind up for today. Well, there are two theorems. The one theorem is actually operators of the same same set of eigenfunctions commute with each other. Okay, this is one general theorem that is required to understand the angular momentum concept. Okay, if you have two operators and if they have same set of eigenfunctions, okay, then they necessarily commute with each other. That is the theorem, and we will try to prove that theorem. Okay, the theorem is if two operators have same set of eigenfunction, then they necessarily commute. That is the theorem, and the proof is here. So for a proof, let us consider A and B are the two operators, and they have the same set of eigenfunction of the form phi n of x. Let us consider there are two operators, A and B are the two operators, and they have same set of eigenfunctions of the form phi n of x. Okay, suppose if operator A operates upon the eigenfunction that is phi n of x, we get the eigenvalue an of an multiplied by phi n of x. Okay, and another relation, eigenrelation, suppose if B operator operates upon phi n of x, we get the another eigenvalue that is bn and multiplied by the phi n of x. So these are the two different eigenrelations, and for the A and B respectively, where for the phi n of x. Okay, so phi n of x is the eigenfunction for the two operators. Now we know one relation that since these are eigenfunctions and they form basically a complete set. All the eigenfunction actually forms a complete set, and if they are said to be complete set, any arbitrary function we can actually write down in terms of the eigenfunctions, right? So based on that particular completeness property, we can actually consider phi of x is an arbitrary function, and it can be written or it can be expressed in terms of the complete set of eigenfunction phi n of x. Okay, in this fashion. So f of x is an arbitrary function which is defined to be in terms of the eigenfunction. Okay, summation n runs from 1 to infinity Cn phi n of x. Okay, and what we do, this arbitrary wave function, now what we have to prove, they actually commute. Okay, what are the operators? The A and B are actually commute. If we have to prove the commutation, first of all we have to find the commutator, right? First of all we have to find the commutator, and the commutator, if it is 0, then we say these are actually commuting, otherwise we say they are not commuting, right? So according to the definition of the commutation, that is the square brackets A comma B, okay, and which can be multiplied with the arbitrary wave function. Okay, so to find the commutator, so these AB minus BA, we have to make it operate upon the arbitrary wave function. But then the arbitrary wave function f of x is actually defined to be in terms of eigenfunction in this fashion, right? So summation n runs from 1 to infinity Cn phi n of x. Okay, Cn phi n of x. So you can just expand this thing in this fashion, right? So it is sigma n here. Here you can see here that summation is here. Instead of writing summation here, you can move the other side, because these are the operators A comma B. Okay, they are in a square bracket. That means AB minus BA. Essentially, that is AB minus BA multiplied by, you have the summation n runs from 1 to infinity Cn phi n of x. Now this summation, and this is a constant, so they do not affect with regard to this operators A and B. Therefore, I can happily move these things to these two objects. I can move this side. Okay, it doesn't affect. but I cannot necessarily, definitely I cannot move phi n of x this side. Why? Because these are operators. So operators will have an effect on the functions. Okay, so I cannot necessarily do that thing, but then I can do for these two things. So that is what it is exactly done in the next step. So sigma n runs from 1 to infinity, Cn AB square bracket AB, okay, commutator of AB multiplied by phi n of x. Now what you can do, you can just expand what is commutator of AB, A comma B, that is nothing but AB minus BA and phi n of x. Okay. Now the wave function you can take inside. The wave function you try to take inside. Here it is outside the bracket. I think this notation is not correct. This is more appropriate. Okay, this wave function you take inside this. Now, when you take inside this, they actually operate from the right hand side, right? So here you have a BA. So simply it will sit here. And here, just after the B operator, it will sit there. So this is the next step. Okay, now we know that operator A, operator B, if it operates upon the eigenfunction phi n of x, what is the answer? The answer is Bn phi n of x. So since my phi n of x is eigenfunction and A is an operator, so in terms of eigenrelation, so I can just replace this B psi n of x as a Bn, okay, eigenvalue multiplied by the phi n of x. Similarly here, I have B operator multiplied by A, okay, but essentially A operator first will affect the function and then later on by the B. Now here when A operator operates upon phi n of x, this is basically we will get the eigenvalue, that is An multiplied by phi n of x, right? So that is the next step here that it is done. Okay, now in this relation again I can say that this Bn is eigenvalue, which eigenvalues are actually real numbers, so therefore they do not affect. So you can actually move the other side of the operator, okay, that is something that you can do. And then this operator A, when it operates upon phi n of x, then what we get is a An of, okay, now this is what we get it actually, Bn multiplied by A phi n of x, and here An B phi n of x. Now in the next step, when A operates upon phi n of x, what we get is An phi n of x. Similarly, when B operates upon, okay, similarly when B here it is operating, so what we get is Bn sin of x. Okay, when A phi n of x operates, we get An phi n of x, and similarly when B operates upon phi n of x, what we get is Bn phi n of x. Okay, and I can make a further simplification. So both terms I have phi n of x is a common factor, and which is actually lying on the left hand side of the each term. Okay, this is one term on the right hand side of the each term, that is the here on the right hand side phi n of x is there. Again here on the right hand side we have phi n of x. So what I can do, I can actually move the outside the brackets. So this becomes Cn multiplied by this, essentially Bn An minus An Bn multiplied by phi n of x. Of course, it is very clear these are the numbers, right? These are the numbers. Bn An are the numbers. Okay, 2 multiplied by 3, which is equal to 3 multiplied by 2, right? So therefore, on that ground, this commutator actually it becomes 0. Okay, it becomes 0. So since f of x is an arbitrary, the commutator actually, what we say, it is 0. So that proves the theorem, isn't it? That proves the theorem. So we started with a assumption or the statement. The statement says that if the operators have the same set of eigenfunction, then they necessarily will commute. So we have assumed that they have the same set of eigenfunction, that is phi n of x is the set of eigenfunction we considered for the same operators. Okay, we started with that assumption, and then finally what we have to show is that they commute. If they are commuting, then the square bracket, the commutator must be 0. Okay, so that we proved at the end that since this object AB multiplied by f of x is becoming 0 for any given arbitrary function, that is f of x, the commutator is 0. Therefore, we conclude that they commute. Okay, we conclude that they commute with each other. That proves the statement. So what is the statement? If the operators have the same set of eigenfunctions, they commute with each other. And the converse, what is the converse? The converse is this thing. Commutating operators will have same set of eigenfunctions. Commutating operators will have same set of eigenfunctions. Okay. Well, let us prove if we have two operators and if they are commuting, and we will try to prove that they will have same set of eigenfunctions. Okay. For that, we have to assume something, right? So they are commuting, right? First, they are commuting, like that we have to assume, and then afterwards we will proceed. For this proof, let us consider two operators A and B again, and they are actually of a non-degenerate system, and then phi A x and phi B x are the eigenfunctions. Let us consider phi A x and then phi B suffix, okay, and similarly A suffix are the two eigenfunctions. Okay, eigenvalue equations of A and B are given by A. When A operating upon phi A, then we get eigenvalue multiplied by phi A x. Similarly, when operator B operates upon phi B of x, we get eigenvalue, corresponding eigenvalue, that is B, and then phi B, our eigenfunction, we will get back. Okay. To prove this, so these are the assumptions that we have to take it. Now, what we have got is that the commuting operators, okay, commuting operators will have same set of eigenfunctions. Okay, so now what if they are commuting? Then let us try to evaluate that thing. Now AB, commutator of AB, okay, commutator of AB multiplied by phi A of x. What we are trying to do is that, okay, let us try to operate AB and also BA, that is the commutator, upon the one of the eigenfunction, that is phi A of x, that is phi A of x. Phi of x is one of the eigenfunction that we have taken. Now AB phi A of x minus BA phi of x. Okay, so this is the object, just expansion of this. Now here we can write like these two or under one particular object we can write it. Similarly, these two things you can write it, right? Now here you can notice here that these are B phi A of x, okay, but here A phi of x, A phi of x, okay, when A operates upon phi of x, this is the eigen relation, therefore we will get the eigen value multiplied by the function back. So we have written, and this one we have written as such, we didn't do anything. Then essentially this becomes A B phi A of x. This is not a eigen relation. Please remember that this is not a eigen relation. When B operates upon phi A of x, nothing happens because that is not a eigenfunction. It will just multiply it. Whereas here, when A operates upon phi A of x, we get eigenvalue, that is eigenrelation. So what we get is this. Okay, and here, according to This is the commutator, right? So what we have evaluated, this is the commutator of a comma b. When the function, when the operators operating upon the function that is the eigenfunction phi a of x, what we got is the commutator. And according to our the theorem statement, what is it is suggested the commutator has to be 0. Since they are commuting, then this commutator has to be 0, isn't it? So therefore, this quantity, this is a commutator of this object. Okay, this object commutator is evaluated this, and this object must be 0 according to the statement. So therefore, I have equated this factor to the 0. Then essentially what we got is operator A multiplied by b phi of x is equal to a b phi a of x. That means what we can do is something that is slightly different thing. You have to try to understand this. Again, this is an eigenrelation. Okay, this is an eigenrelation. I'm sure that most of you would have noticed it. When a is operating upon a wave function. What is the wave function in this case? B phi a of x is my function. Okay, so you can see here that we are getting back on the right hand side, we are getting an eigenvalue a, and then another the function back. So this is the one. You can see that is the function now. That is the function now. So this particular thing is an eigenrelation. It is an eigenrelation in terms of b phi a of x. Okay, when a is operating upon b phi a of x, okay, which is a eigenfunction, I am getting a wave eigenvalue multiplied by b phi a of x. Okay, so this is b phi a of x is an eigenfunction of a operator, right? But we know that we have only one eigenfunction phi a of x, and its eigenvalue is a. Please remember that according to our assumptions and statements, we have only one eigenfunction. We started with a non-degenerate system. That means we will have, we don't have a degenerate system. Therefore, for a particular state, you can have different wave function. No, we have only one state which has a precisely defined energy values and then corresponding eigenfunction, and the corresponding and then when a operator operates upon the eigenfunction, then we will get a precise eigenvalue multiplied by the eigenfunction back. So this is slightly a contradiction. This is slightly a contradiction to what we have assumed. Therefore, what I say is that b phi a of x and then phi a of x must be related with each other, isn't it? What we got is that b phi a of x is an eigenfunction of operator A. But what we started with is phi of x is an eigenfunction of operator A, and then when operator A operates upon the corresponding function that is phi of x, we get the eigenvalue that is A, and then the eigenfunction back. And we also started with that the system is non-degenerate, so there is no question of that we have different functions and for a particular state, a same function for a particular state. Therefore, this is a contradiction, and this contradiction cannot be true. What could have happened is that the two functions, that is b phi a of x and then phi of x, must be related with each other. Okay, they must be related, only then this type of relation will be satisfied. So that means that b phi a of x must be equal to a constant multiplied by phi a of x, must be multiplied with a constant. Okay, now this also suggests what it is suggesting. Again, the operator b, when it is operating, you can see the way it is written now. B, when b is operating upon phi a of x, we are getting some constant multiplied by phi a of x. Again, this is a eigenrelation. Again, this is an eigenrelation. Okay, again, this is an eigenrelation, it gives an impression that the phi a of x is also a eigenfunction of operator B. Phi a of x is also operator of operator B. Well, this can't be, right? That can't be. That only possible that the phi a and phi b are actually equal to each other. Okay, so this relation, which also implies that the phi a of x is a eigenfunction of operator B. But then we know that operator B has an eigenfunction of phi b, right? So when it is operating, that we get the eigenvalue b multiplied by phi b back. So this is again contradiction. Okay, that implies basically the two functions must be same. Okay, there is no way that these two relations actually can be satisfied, isn't it? So therefore, we proved that proves basically the statement. Essentially, we assumed that initially starting position that we have assumed that we have two different functions. Okay, for the two operators what we have, we assume two different eigenfunctions, and essentially at the end what we showed that the two functions are not different, they are same. That means basically they will have same set of eigenfunctions. I hope that you followed. And further, I will also give another very important thing. Yeah. So this implies that the eigenfunction phi a and phi b are the same. Therefore, it is proved that if two operators have the same set of eigenfunctions, then and there they necessarily commute, and the converse, if the two operators commuting, then they will have the same set of eigenfunctions. Similarly, I will also recall the two relations that we have started with. When two operators, that is A, when it is operating upon the same set of eigenfunction, that is phi n of x, then we get the eigenvalue an and then multiplied by phi n of x. Similarly, when the operator B operates upon the phi n of x, right, we'll get the eigenvalue bn and then phi n of x. Okay, so the commuting operators will have the same set of eigen functions, right? So from this, it is also true that from these two relations, okay, it is also clear that the quantities corresponding to A and B have simultaneously and sharply defined values. Okay, we already proved that the commuting operators will have same set of eigenfunctions. Similarly, the two operators will have the same set of eigenfunction, they commute. Now, from these two relations, it is also clear that if two operators are commuting, they will have a simultaneously and precisely a defined values. Okay, they will have a precisely well-defined eigenstate, I would say, in other words. Okay, please remember that if you have two operators corresponding to, please remember that again, operator means it is related to some observable corresponding to every measurable observable. In quantum mechanics, there is a linear Hermitian operator, right? So according to the operator definition, that means operator means it is related to some physical quantity or measurable quantity. Okay, now if any two operators that those correspond to two different observables or measurable quantities, if they are commuting, they will have same set of eigenfunction. That is one thing. So if they have same set of eigenfunction, it also implies that they will have a precisely and simultaneously sharp defined values. In other words, they will have a well-defined eigenstates. Okay, they will have eigenstates. You can see that this, when A is operating upon the eigenfunction, you get the well-defined state. You will not have any other state which actually resemble with the same value. Similarly, when B is operating upon the function, then you are getting another value. Okay, it is not A and again, you are getting something else. Okay, so this is what I mean mean by the simultaneously they have precise or sharply defined values. Okay, so let me conclude that if you have two operators which are commuting, they will have the same set of eigenfunctions, and because they have a mutual eigenfunctions, the observable corresponding to the operators have simultaneously and sharp defined values. In other words, they will have a distinct eigenstates. Okay, so this is something that we will be using in the next discussion, that is the angular momentum. So with this, I have concluded my discussion for today. If you have any doubts, maybe you can please ask me. Otherwise, we can wind up for today.